A flashing red and blue light in the rearview mirror usually means a ruined evening, a traffic ticket, and an unwanted delay. But for Officer Travis Morrow, pulling over a black man, driving a flawless vintage muscle car, was never going to be a routine stop. It was an ego trip. He was convinced he had found a fraud, a street criminal pretending to be something he was not, a man playing dress-up in a military uniform. What Travis did not know was that the man he was about to put in handcuffs was a highly decorated, two-star Major General in the United States Army. By the time the truth reached the Pentagon, Travis's career and the reputation of his entire precinct would already be collapsing around him. The heavy Virginia humidity hung over the manicured streets of Oakage, a quiet and wealthy suburban town, close enough to Washington to attract senior officials, military officers, executives, and political figures, yet far enough away to feel protected from the constant noise of the capital. Major General Darius Whitaker was exhausted. He was in his late 50s, a career soldier whose body carried the memory of combat deployments, parachute jumps, sleepless operations, and years of command responsibility. He had spent more than 3 decades in the United States Army. His hair was cut close, with silver showing at the temples, and even behind the wheel of a car, his posture remained straight, disciplined by a lifetime of military habit. I was driving the vehicle he loved most, a fully restored midnight blue 1969 Chevrolet Chevelle Supersport. The deep rumble of his engine sounded almost out of place among the quiet electric cars that usually moved through Oakage. Darius was returning home after a draining session in the Situation Room. His wife, Evelyn, was waiting for him. He was still wearing his standard operational camouflage pattern uniform. 2 black stars rested on his chest. I was not speeding. I was not swerving. I was traveling slightly below the posted limit. His attention was divided between the road and a logistics problem involving North Atlantic Treaty Organization troop movements in Eastern Europe. The kind of issue that had occupied his mind for hours and would still be waiting when he returned to work. Far behind him, partly concealed beneath the shadow of a broad oak tree near an intersection, sat Oakage Police Cruiser 42. Inside were Officer Travis Morrow and his rookie partner, Officer Nolan Briggs. Travis had spent years on the force. His ambition was far greater than his judgment. Inside the department, he had developed a reputation for aggressive policing, unnecessary confrontations, and a prejudice that he usually disguised as instinct. He resented people he believed had status they did not deserve. He resented wealth when he thought someone else had obtained it too easily, and he especially resented being challenged. Nolan was different. I was still new to the job, nervous, eager to prove himself, and deeply intimidated by Travis's aggressive personality. As the Chevelle passed their position, Travis turned his head. "Look at that," he said. His eyes followed the car. "Classic Chevelle, perfect paint. That thing has to be worth a fortune." Nolan watched the vehicle move steadily away. "It's beautiful," he said, "and he's driving the speed limit." Travis gave a low scoff. "People who drive cars like that around here usually don't look like him." Nolan frowned. "Like what?" "Like they belong in this zip code." Travis shifted the cruiser into drive. He accelerated onto the road and began closing the distance. Darius noticed the headlights approaching quickly in his rearview mirror. Hine did not panic. He checked his speed. Still below the limit. He checked his lane position. Perfect. At first, he assumed the cruiser might be responding to a call and would pass. Instead, the police vehicle moved directly behind him and stayed there. Too close. Aggressively close. Inside the cruiser, Nolan looked at the computer terminal. "The license plate is clean," he said, "registered to Darius Whitaker. Address is in Westbourne Estates." Travis frowned. The facts did not fit the story he had already started telling himself. Westbourne Estates was one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in the county. Travis looked through the windshield again. "Tint looks too dark." Nolan glanced at the Chevelle. "It looks normal to me." "Did you see him cross the center line?" Nolan hesitated. "I didn't see that." "He'd crossed it." Travis's voice hardened. "Turn on the lights." Nolan looked at him for a moment. Then he reached for the switch. Red and blue light exploded across the rear of the Chevelle. The siren gave a short, commanding burst. Darius released a long breath. The fatigue in his body suddenly felt heavier. He checked his mirrors, activated his turn signal, and smoothly moved onto the wide shoulder. He positioned the car carefully, leaving room for both officers to approach safely. Then he turned off the engine. The deep rumble of the Chevelle disappeared. Han lowered all four windows. It was an old habit, a courtesy, a safety measure. Then he placed both large, calloused hands clearly at the top of the steering wheel. Darius had nothing to hide, but as a black man in America, even one with 2 stars on his chest, he understood the unspoken rules of a roadside encounter. Keep your hands visible. Move slowly. Speak calmly. Do not give fear an excuse to become violence. Inside the cruiser, Travis unbuckled his seatbelt. "All right, rookie," he said. "Let's see what kind of money bought that car." Nolan felt his stomach tighten. "Travis, he didn't do anything. He crossed the line. I didn't see it. You need to get your eyes checked." Travis reached down and released the retention strap on his service weapon. Nolan noticed. The movement was completely unnecessary for a simple traffic stop. Travis stepped out of the cruiser. His boots crunched against the gravel as he walked toward the Chevelle. He moved slowly, almost theatrically. Instead of going directly to the driver's window, he stopped near the rear quarter panel and placed one hand on the perfectly polished trunk. His palm left a visible mark on the wax. Then he continued forward. Darius watched in the side mirror. I noticed the open holster. His mind had been trained for decades to evaluate threats quickly, aggressive, insecure, overcompensating, potentially dangerous. Travis reached the driver's window and raised a heavy flashlight directly into Darius's face, even though the street lighting was more than sufficient. "Evening," Darius said. His voice was deep, measured, and calm. "License, registration, and proof of insurance." Travis kept the flashlight aimed at Darius's eyes. "They're in my wallet, in my back right pocket, and the registration is in the glove compartment," Darius said. "I'm going to reach for them now." "Just get them." Darius moved slowly. He removed his wallet and took out his Virginia driver's license. Then, anticipating the usual question about the uniform, he also removed his Department of Defense Common Access card. He retrieved the registration. Then he handed everything through the open window. Travis took the documents from his hand. "I examined the driver's license first." Darius Whitaker. Then he looked at the military card. He stared at it for a moment. His flashlight moved toward Darius's uniform. The beam crossed the camouflage pattern, the United States Army name tape, and finally, the rank insignia at the center of the chest. 2 black stars. A smile began to form on Travis's face. It was not respect. It was mockery. "Major General." "Huh? That is correct, officer," Darius replied. Travis took half a step back and rested one hand near his firearm. "You expect me to believe you are a 2-star general in the United States Army?" Darius's expression did not change. "I don't expect you to believe anything. I expect you to verify the information through your system. If you believe I committed a traffic violation, write the citation, then allow me to continue home." Officer Nolan Briggs had moved near the rear of the Chevelle. He could not hear every word, but he could hear enough. The contempt in Travis's voice made him uneasy. Travis leaned closer to the driver's window. His face was only inches from Darius now. The smell of stale coffee and cheap spearmint gum entered the car. "Here's what I think, Darius." Travis deliberately ignored the rank. "I think this car was bought with money that isn't legal. I think that uniform came from an army surplus store. And I think that plastic card is something you printed so you can pretend to be important and get military discounts." Darius did not blink. The accusation was so absurd that it did not immediately make him angry. It fascinated him, and it commanded thousands of soldiers. He had made decisions that affected military operations across continents. He had briefed the President of the United States. And now, on the side of a quiet Virginia road, a local police officer had decided he was pretending to be a soldier. "Officer," Darius said. His voice lowered. "I strongly advise you to step away from this vehicle, return to your cruiser, and contact dispatch. Have them verify my Department of Defense identification number. If you continue down this path, you're going to make a serious mistake that will permanently affect your career." To a reasonable person, it was a warning. To Travis Morrow, it sounded like a challenge. His face reddened. "Are you threatening me, boy?" The word stayed in the humid air. Darius's eyes narrowed slightly. "I am stating a fact. Verify the card. Step out of the vehicle." Travis's voice suddenly rose. Darius stayed still. Travis widened his stance and pulled his weapon partly from the holster. "Step out of the vehicle now." Nolan jumped. His hand moved instinctively toward his own weapon. "Travis, what's happening?" "We have a suspect refusing orders and impersonating a federal officer." Travis fully unholstered the weapon. It remained angled downward near the door, but the threat was obvious. "Get out." Darius looked at the gun. Then he looked at Travis's face. She had seen men under pressure before. She had seen soldiers make terrible decisions because fear and pride had taken control. A panicked, poorly disciplined officer with a weapon could become more dangerous than an experienced enemy combatant. "I'm turning off the electrical system," Darius said calmly. "I'm unbuckling my seatbelt. My hands are empty. I'm opening the door." Every movement was deliberate. He opened the heavy door and stepped onto the asphalt. At more than 6 feet tall and heavily built, Darius towered over Travis. The size difference changed the officer instantly. Travis had wanted control. Instead, he suddenly seemed frightened by the physical presence of the man in front of him. "Turn around. Put your hands on the roof. Interlace your fingers." Darius obeyed. He turned away, placed his hands on the cool roof of the Chevelle, and interlaced his fingers. Travis lunged toward him. He grabbed Darius's left wrist and twisted it hard behind his back. Pain moved through the general's shoulder. Darius did not react. Military survival training had taught him what real physical pressure felt like. Travis snapped a steel handcuff around his left wrist and tightened it until the metal immediately cut into the skin. Then he pulled Darius's right arm back and secured the second cuff. "You have the right to remain silent," Travis said loudly. He pressed his forearm into the center of Darius's back, directly over the 2 stars on the uniform. "Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." Nolan stood frozen. The man in front of him was offering no resistance at all. "Travis," Nolan said, "what's the charge?" "Impersonating a military officer, forgery, fraud, resisting arrest." "I did not resist," Darius said calmly. "Shut up." Travis shoved him forward. Darius's chest struck the roof of the Chevelle. "You're a fake," Travis said. "A lying fake. Stolen valor is a federal offense. You're going to federal prison." Darius turned his head slightly. "Officer Briggs." Nolan looked up. "Your name is Briggs, correct?" "Yes, sir." "You need to call your watch commander now before your partner does damage that cannot be undone." Darius's voice was gentle, not weak, gentle, like a senior officer speaking to a young soldier who still had time to make the right decision. "Don't talk to him." Travis grabbed Darius by the back of the collar. "You talk to me." He pulled Darius away from the car. "You're going to jail, fake general. Let's see how tough you are inside a holding cell." Travis marched him toward the cruiser. Several passing cars slowed. People stared, and an older couple looked through their windshield at a black man in military uniform being pushed into the back of a police car. Darius felt the humiliation, and felt it deeply, but he did not let it appear on his face. Travis pushed him into the cramped rear seat. Because of Darius's broad shoulders and the tight handcuffs, he had to sit forward at an uncomfortable angle. The door slammed. Travis returned to the Chevelle and tossed the keys to Nolan. "Call a tow truck. Have this car impounded." Nolan caught the keys. Hein looked sick. "Travis, I looked at the identification. It has a microchip. The holograms look real." Travis stared at him. "What if he really is a major general?" Travis laughed. "Are you serious?" He pointed toward the cruiser. "Look at him. Does that man look like he commands soldiers?" Nolan did not answer. Travis continued, "He's a criminal who figured out how to make a convincing card. We're doing the country a favor." He climbed behind the wheel. Then he looked at Darius through the plexiglass partition. "You're going away for a long time." Darius met his eyes. "Officer Morrow, I hope you have prepared for unemployment, because by the time this is over, you may need a new career." Travis laughed again. Then he drove away. The Oak Ridge Police Department was a small concrete building that carried the smell of burnt coffee, pine cleaner, and stale sweat. When Travis brought Darius into the booking area, officers stopped what they were doing to look. Darius walked with perfect posture despite the restraints. The cuffs were cutting deeply into his wrists, but his movements remained controlled. He looked like the only person in the room who fully understood what was happening. Behind the booking counter sat Sergeant Warren Pike. Warren was a long-serving officer approaching retirement. He was tired, cynical, and especially skeptical of Travis Morrow. "What do we have?" Travis smiled proudly. "Caught a live one. Traffic stop turned into an impersonation case. He's pretending to be a major general." Travis placed Darius's wallet, driver's license, and Department of Defense card on the desk. Warren picked up the common access card and held it beneath the fluorescent light. The holographic eagle shifted as he tilted it. He turned the card over. There was a magnetic strip, a gold microchip. Warren had served in the Marine Corps earlier in his life. Military identification technology had changed since then, but the card in his hand did not feel like a cheap fake. Then he looked at Darius. The haircut, the posture, the uniform, the complete absence of panic. Name, Darius Whitaker, Major General, United States Army. His voice filled the concrete room. Travis laughed. Give it a rest. The performance is over. Warren turned sharply. Be quiet, Travis. Then he looked back at the computer. Take him to holding cell 3. Remove the cuffs. I'm going to verify this. Travis frowned. I was non-compliant. Remove the cuffs. Put him in the cell. Bring me the intake paperwork. The tone left no room for argument. Travis grabbed Darius by the arm and pushed him toward the holding area. Let's go, General. The corridor contained 3 barred cells. The first 2 were empty. Travis unlocked the third and pushed Darius inside. Then he removed the handcuffs. Darius brought his arms forward. Deep red marks circled both wrists. He rubbed them once. Travis slammed the cell door. The lock closed with a heavy metallic sound. Make yourself comfortable, General. Federal prison food should suit you. Travis walked away. Darius remained standing. There was a steel bench attached to the wall and a stainless steel toilet in the corner. He did not sit. He walked to the bars and waited. At the booking desk, Warren entered Darius's driver's license information. The record returned immediately. Darius Whitaker. Clean record. No warrants. Home address in Westbourne Estates. Warren stared at the screen. Westbourne Estates was one of the most expensive neighborhoods in the county. Homes that were worth millions of dollars. Then he entered the Department of Defense identification information. The system paused. A loading symbol remained on the screen. Standard local police databases could verify basic military status, but high-level Pentagon personnel were not fully accessible through ordinary law enforcement systems. When the identification of a flag officer with top-secret clearance was queried, the computer did not display an ordinary personnel file. Instead, the screen changed. Restricted file. Clearance required. Contact Department of Defense liaison for verification. Warren leaned back. A cold sensation moved down his spine. He looked toward the holding cells. Travis returned and dropped an intake form on the desk. So, he asked, did he make the card at a print shop? Warren looked at him. The system flagged the identification. Travis rolled his eyes. Because it's fake. No. Warren pointed toward the screen. It doesn't say invalid. It says restricted. Travis stared at the monitor. If this man is who this card says he is, Warren continued, you did not arrest someone pretending to be a soldier. You arrested a major general. He's lying. Travis slammed his palm against the counter. Look at him. Does he look like a general? Warren's face hardened. What exactly does a general look like? Before Travis could answer, Darius's voice came from the holding corridor. Sergeant. The room became quiet. By law, I am entitled to a phone call. I would like to make that call now. Warren stood. He picked up a cordless phone and walked toward cell 3. Travis followed. Warren stopped outside the bars. Who do you want to call, Mr. Whitaker? A lawyer? Your wife? Neither. Darius reached through the bars and accepted the phone. Then he dialed a secure number from memory. It was not an ordinary local number. The call routed through an encrypted military switchboard in Arlington. Travis stood behind Warren with a sarcastic smile. Who's he calling? The fake president? Darius ignored him. The phone rang. Then a crisp professional voice answered. National Military Command Center. Senior Watch Officer. Identify. Darius's voice changed. I was no longer speaking as a motorist explaining himself to police. I was speaking as a commander contacting headquarters. This is Major General Darius Whitaker. Clearance authentication follows. Han provided the secure code. There was a pause. The person on the other end verified it. Authentication confirmed. Good evening, General Whitaker. How can the command center assist you? Warren stopped breathing for a second. Travis's smile weakened. Patch me through to the home residence of General Preston Calloway, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. The watch officer paused. General Calloway is off duty, sir. Is this a national security emergency? No. Darius looked directly at Travis. It is a personnel issue. Haight continued. Tell General Calloway that Major General Darius Whitaker is currently locked inside a holding cell at the Oak Ridge Police Department in Virginia. I require his immediate assistance verifying my identity for local law enforcement. The silence on the other end was noticeable. Copy that, General. The line began transferring. Darius lowered the phone slightly. He's connecting me. For the first time, a faint smile touched his face. Officer Morrow, I suggest you begin thinking very carefully about how you're going to explain this arrest. Travis's face changed. The calm in Darius's expression frightened him more than shouting would have. A click sounded through the phone. Darius, a tired, gravelly voice answered. It was General Preston Calloway, a 4-star commander and chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. What's happening? Darius spoke clearly enough for both officers to hear. I apologize for disturbing you. I'm currently locked in cell 3 at the Oak Ridge Police Department in Virginia. A pause. I was stopped for a traffic violation I did not commit, accused of impersonating a military officer, and physically restrained during the arrest. The silence on the other end became absolute. When General Calloway spoke again, every trace of sleep had disappeared. Are you telling me that a local police officer put a 2-star Major General of the United States Army in a holding cell? His voice lowered. Are you injured? Bruised wrists. Nothing serious. Darius looked at Travis. The arresting officer, Travis Morrow, appears convinced that my Department of Defense identification was fabricated. I need you to verify my identity for the desk sergeant before the situation becomes worse. Put the highest-ranking officer in that building on the phone. Darius extended the cordless phone through the bars. I wants to speak with you, Sergeant. Warren's hand shook as he accepted it. This is Sergeant Warren Pike. Sergeant Pike, this is General Preston Calloway, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. The authority in the voice was unmistakable. Listen carefully. You currently have a 2-star Major General of the United States Army in your custody. He holds a top-secret security clearance. A liaison team from the Pentagon Force Protection Agency and the Federal Bureau of Investigation is being sent to your location. Warren swallowed. Do not interrogate him. Do not process him. Preserve every record associated with this arrest and release him from that cell immediately. Yes, sir. Warren's voice nearly failed. Yes, General. Open the cell. Now. Warren lowered the phone. He turned toward the cell door and reached for his keys. Travis grabbed his arm. Sergeant, stop. Warren looked at him. It's a prank, Travis said. He called one of his friends. Get your hand off me. Warren shoved him away. That was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. His voice echoed through the corridor. Do you understand what you've done? Warren unlocked the cell. He pulled the door open. General Whitaker, sir, I am deeply sorry. Darius stepped out. I did not celebrate. He adjusted the collar of his uniform and looked toward Travis. Travis was trembling. The arrogance that had followed him from the roadside had disappeared. Then the administrative doors opened. Captain Marcus Ellery, the night commander, rushed into the booking area holding a vibrating phone. Warren, what is happening? The mayor just called me. The Secretary of Defense contacted his office. Marcus's eyes moved across the room. Then he saw Darius. A 2-star general stood beside an open holding cell. Marcus went pale. He turned toward Travis. Tell me you didn't arrest him. Travis's voice cracked. He drifted over the line. His windows were too dark. It was a lawful stop. You arrested a general for a traffic stop. Marcus shouted. Are you out of your mind? Darius spoke calmly. He's going to need legal counsel, Captain. Marcus stopped. Darius continued. And I strongly suggest you secure this building and preserve all evidence. Your department is about to receive federal attention. Soon, the quiet streets outside the Oak Ridge Police Department filled with official vehicles. Police Chief Conrad Dawson had arrived after being called from home. He stood in the booking room confronting Travis with furious disbelief. Darius sat quietly on a wooden bench near the desk. Sergeant Warren Pike offered coffee. Darius declined. He'd offered water. Darius declined. She even offered the captain's chair. Darius remained on the bench. I did not need comfort. I needed the records preserved. Then heavy engines sounded outside. 3 black sport utility vehicles pulled to the curb. Doors opened. Federal Protective Service personnel entered the building in tactical gear. Behind them walked a tall man in a charcoal suit. Special Agent Sterling Vance of the Federal Bureau of Investigation served as a liaison with the Department of Defense. He moved directly past the local officers. General Whitaker, sir. Sterling came to attention. Special Agent Sterling Vance. The Pentagon sent us to escort you home. Are you injured? I'm fine, Agent Vance. Delayed, but fine. Sterling turned toward Chief Dawson. His expression became cold. Chief, a federal investigation is opening into this incident for possible civil rights violations, unlawful detention, and interference with a federal officer. He continued, I need every body camera recording, dash camera recording, radio transmission, dispatch record, and booking room surveillance file connected to this stop preserved and surrendered pursuant to federal process. Chief Dawson nodded quickly. Of course, this was a terrible mistake by one officer. We will cooperate completely. Who made the arrest? Chief Dawson pointed toward Travis. Travis looked physically ill. The tactical officers. The Federal Bureau of Investigation liaison. The general he had accused of being a fraud. Everything around him made the scale of his mistake impossible to deny. Chief Dawson looked at him. Officer Morrow, hand over your badge and your service weapon. Travis stared. Now, you are suspended from police duties pending investigation and termination proceedings. Travis slowly removed his duty belt. The heavy leather struck the floor, then he unpinned the silver badge from his chest. The metal left a small hole in the uniform fabric. He placed the badge on the desk. Then he looked at Darius. "General, I was just doing my job." Darius interrupted him. "No, Mr. Morrow." His voice held no anger. "I believed your badge gave you permission to act on your prejudice. You saw a black man driving an expensive car, and you built a story around that image before you had any evidence." He paused. "You did not do your job. You betrayed the purpose of your uniform. Now the law will determine the consequences." Darius turned away. Then he looked toward Nolan Briggs. "Officer Briggs." Nolan straightened immediately. "Yes, sir." "You knew the stop was wrong." Nolan's eyes dropped. "I saw it in your face," Darius continued. "But you allowed fear of your partner to override your duty." His tone softened. "Learn from this. If you cannot challenge wrongdoing inside your own patrol car, you will not be able to protect people outside it." Nolan swallowed. His eyes filled with emotion. "Yes, sir. I understand." Darius turned back to Sterling Vance. "I'm ready to go home. My wife is probably wondering where I am." "This way, General." Darius walked through the doors of the Oakage Police Department, flanked by federal officers. Behind him, the room remained silent. Chief Dawson held his head in his hands. Sergeant Warren Pike stared at the computer screen. Captain Marcus Ellery looked exhausted. And Travis Morrow stood near the wall, understanding that the authority he had used to bully someone he thought was powerless had disappeared in a single night. The incident did not remain a local problem. It quickly became a national scandal. Nolan Briggs, terrified that he might be implicated in the conduct he had witnessed, contacted federal investigators and provided copies of the cruiser's dash camera and interior audio before anyone in the department could interfere with the records. Major national newspapers reported the story. Television networks replayed the footage. Across the country, viewers watched a local officer mock, handcuff, and arrest one of the most senior logistics commanders in the United States Army. The federal response expanded. The Department of Justice Civil Rights Division began examining the Oakage Police Department. Travis returned to his modest home and watched the coverage from the kitchen table. His phone rang constantly. His police union representative eventually called. The news was not what Travis expected. The evidence was too damaging. The political pressure was too great. The union would not provide the level of defense he assumed would protect him. Then someone knocked on the door. Travis looked through the blinds. Two men stood on the porch wearing Federal Bureau of Investigation windbreakers. His stomach tightened. He opened the door. "Travis Morrow." The lead agent did not wait long for an answer. "I'm Special Agent Elias Reed. We have a federal arrest warrant charging deprivation of rights under color of law under Title 18 of the United States Code, Section 242. Turn around and place your hands behind your back." For the first time, Travis heard those words directed at him. He turned. Steel handcuffs closed around his wrists. Unlike Darius, Travis did not remain calm and began to cry. Neighbors stepped onto their lawns. Some lifted phones and recorded as the officer who had once boasted about his status was led away by federal agents. The consequences continued. Travis desperately searched for legal representation and contacted a prestigious Washington defense firm. After hearing his name and reviewing the basic facts, the firm declined the case. His reputation had become toxic. His financial situation was worse than anyone knew. Federal investigators, examining his records, discovered that he carried more than $80,000 in credit card debt. For years, he had been spending beyond his means to create the image of success. The man who had looked at Darius's classic Chevelle and decided the general must be a fraud had been hiding a private financial collapse of his own. Travis's wife, Melissa, had spent years overlooking his arrogance and casual cruelty. The public scandal finally became too much. Investigators had seized computers and financial records. The debt came into the open. The family life Travis had treated as permanent began to break apart. Melissa packed her belongings, took the family dog, and moved in with her sister. Divorce papers were left behind. Travis found himself alone and facing federal prosecution. Meanwhile, at the Pentagon, Darius returned to work. He resumed reviewing troop movements and logistics. Colleagues quietly asked how he was doing. Darius adjusted his glasses. "The system is correcting an error," he said. "Our focus is the mission." He refused to give Travis any more of his mental energy than necessary. Eventually, the case reached the United States District Court for the Eastern District of Virginia. Travis sat at the defense table looking like a different man. The aggressive posture was gone. The swagger was gone. His shoulders were lowered. His face was thinner. He wore a standard detention uniform and kept his eyes on the polished wood in front of him. The judge was Helena Brooks, an experienced federal jurist, known for sharp analysis and little patience for abuse of government authority. The courtroom was full. Chief Conrad Dawson sat behind the prosecution table. The scandal had forced him into early retirement. Nolan Briggs was also present, and had avoided federal charges by cooperating and testifying about what he had witnessed. But the experience had changed him. Eventually resigned from law enforcement, deeply disillusioned by how easily fear and loyalty had nearly pulled him into wrongdoing. In the front row sat Major General Darius Whitaker. He wore his Class A dress uniform. Ribbons and decorations covered his chest, each one representing years of military service. His posture was straight. His face was calm. Judge Brooks looked toward Travis. "Mr. Morrow, you have pleaded guilty to one count of deprivation of rights under color of law, a federal felony." She paused. "Before I impose sentence, does the victim wish to speak?" The prosecutor stood. "Yes, Your Honor. General Whitaker has prepared a statement." Darius rose from his seat. He did not need to walk to the podium. His voice filled the courtroom. "Your Honor, when a soldier puts on a uniform, that soldier accepts a responsibility to defend the Constitution of the United States, even at the cost of personal safety. We accept that burden so citizens can live freely, safely, and equally under the law." He paused. Travis slowly looked up. Darius met his eyes. "On the night of my arrest, Mr. Morrow used authority granted under that same Constitution to intimidate a citizen based on his own prejudice. I did not see a man. I did not see a general. I saw a target." Darius took a slow breath. "I am not here because I want revenge. Mr. Morrow's actions have already cost him his career, his family stability, and his freedom. My concern is larger than one man. It is the badge he wore. The badge represents public trust. When someone turns that trust into a weapon of humiliation, the damage reaches far beyond one traffic stop. It damages confidence in every honorable officer who tries to serve the public correctly." Darius's voice remained calm. "I ask this court to impose a sentence that reminds every person entrusted with authority that the law is meant to protect the innocent, not satisfy the ego of the powerful." Darius sat down. The courtroom remained silent. Judge Brooks adjusted her glasses. "General Whitaker, thank you for your service and for the dignity you have shown throughout these proceedings." Then she looked at Travis. "Mr. Morrow, I reviewed the dash camera footage. I watched you mock, physically restrain, and unlawfully detain a decorated senior officer of the United States military." Her voice sharpened. "Your conduct was not a simple misunderstanding. It was a deliberate abuse of authority. You acted as though your badge made your assumptions more important than evidence." Travis began to cry. His restrained hands shook against the table. The judge continued. "The irony is that the federal government you accuse General Whitaker of pretending to serve is now the government holding you accountable. You betrayed your oath. You betrayed the trust given to you by your community. And your sentence must reflect the seriousness of that betrayal." Judge Brooks announced the punishment. Travis was sentenced to 4 years in federal custody, followed by 3 years of supervised release. "I was permanently barred from holding positions in law enforcement, security, or public office at the local, state, or federal level." The gavel struck. Federal marshals moved forward. They took Travis by the arms and brought him to his feet. As he was led toward the side door, he looked back. Darius was standing. The general adjusted his uniform. Then he turned and walked toward the courtroom exit, returning to the responsibilities that had existed long before Travis entered his life. On the roadside, Travis had promised Darius that he was going to federal prison. It turned out to be the only prediction he made that came true. What began as a routine power trip ended with the destruction of Travis Morrow's career, because he allowed prejudice, arrogance, and insecurity to replace evidence and judgment. Darius's calm was not weakness. It was discipline. And had spent a lifetime learning that emotional control can be the difference between order and disaster. On the roadside, he understood that the most dangerous thing he could do was let Travis decide his behavior. So he moved slowly. He spoke clearly. He followed instructions that protected his immediate safety. He'd remembered details. He warned the rookie. He asked for verification. And when the opportunity came, he made one phone call. But the deeper lesson is not that Darius happened to know powerful people. It is not that justice only matters because a major general was mistreated. The opposite is true. Darius's rank exposed the injustice because it proved how little Travis actually knew about the man he had already judged. If Darius had been a mechanic, a teacher, a delivery driver, or an unemployed father on his way home, the officer's conduct would still have been wrong. A person should not need 2 stars on his chest before another human being recognizes his dignity. That is what made Darius's response so powerful. He never argued that he deserved respect because he was important. Han expected respect because he was a citizen. The uniform only revealed the size of Travis's mistake. It did not create the right that had been violated. Travis saw an expensive car. Then he saw a black driver. Instead of gathering facts, he connected those 2 details to a story that already existed in his mind. The car must be stolen. The money must be illegal. The uniform must be fake. The military identification must be counterfeit. Each assumption made the next one easier. When evidence challenged the story, Travis did not reconsider. I became angry. When Nolan said the car was driving legally, Travis insisted it had crossed the line. When the plate came back clean, Travis searched for another excuse. When the address showed a wealthy neighborhood, he dismissed it. When the military identification looked authentic, he called it fake. When Darius calmly asked him to verify the card, Travis interpreted knowledge as defiance. By the time the handcuffs went on, Travis was no longer investigating anything. I was defending his ego. That is how small prejudice can become serious harm. It often does not begin with a dramatic declaration. It begins with a conclusion made too early, a refusal to listen, a need to be right, a belief that admitting uncertainty would make a person look weak. But humility is not weakness. Asking, "What if I am wrong?" can be one of the strongest things a person in authority can do. Nolan Briggs learned that lesson painfully. He knew something was wrong before the stop became an arrest. Hein saw that Darius was driving legally. Hein saw that the registration was clean. Hein saw the military identification. He heard the way Travis spoke. He felt the danger growing, but he was afraid of challenging the senior officer beside him. His silence did not create the misconduct, but it allowed the situation to continue longer than it should have. Later, Nolan cooperated and preserved evidence. Hein told the truth. Those choices mattered. They did not erase his earlier hesitation, but they showed that responsibility can begin the moment someone decides to stop being silent. Sometimes courage is not dramatic. Sometimes courage is a rookie officer saying, "Stop. This is wrong." Sometimes it is a sergeant refusing to ignore a restricted military identification. Sometimes it is a citizen staying calm while another person tries to provoke him. Sometimes it is a witness preserving a recording before someone else has a chance to make it disappear. The people inside the Oakage Police Department also faced choices. Sergeant Warren Pike could have followed Travis's story without question. Instead, he looked at the identification carefully. Han used his experience. He checked the system. Han noticed that restricted did not mean fake. That small act of professional skepticism prevented the situation from becoming even worse. Captain Marcus Ellery could have tried to protect the department by minimizing what happened. Chief Conrad Dawson could have treated the incident as a public relations problem. Federal investigators could have looked only at Darius's rank. Instead, the evidence became the center of the process. That is how accountability should work. Not because the victim is powerful, not because the story becomes national news, but because facts matter. A badge represents trust. A military rank represents trust. A judicial robe represents trust. A corporate title represents trust. Even the authority of a parent, teacher, supervisor, or community leader represents trust in a smaller form. Power is rarely just something a person owns. Usually, it is something other people allow that person to use. That means power carries responsibility. The more authority someone has, the less room there is for casual cruelty. The more vulnerable another person is, the more carefully power should be handled. Travis believed authority meant never being questioned. Darius understood authority differently. Darius had commanded soldiers in combat. I knew that a good leader does not become weaker when someone brings new information. A good leader changes course when facts require it. A good leader does not confuse fear with respect. A good leader does not need to humiliate someone to prove who is in charge. That difference separated the two men more clearly than the stars on Darius's uniform ever could. One man carried enormous institutional authority, but used it with restraint. The other carried local authority and used it to feed his insecurity. In the end, the person who needed power most was the one least capable of holding it responsibly. There is also a lesson in the way Darius refused to give the incident more of his life than necessary. After the arrest, he returned to the Pentagon. He returned to logistics. He'd returned to the work that mattered to him. When colleagues asked how he was doing, he did not turn the experience into a permanent identity. He did not allow Travis Morrow to become the center of his future. The system is correcting an error, he said. Then he went back to work. That does not mean what happened was small. It does not mean he forgot the humiliation. It does not mean forgiveness required pretending the arrest was harmless. It means Darius understood something important. Accountability and bitterness are not the same thing. A person can demand consequences without letting anger become the only emotion left inside. A person can tell the truth without living forever inside the worst moment of the story. A person can protect others from future harm without becoming consumed by the person who caused the original harm. That is a quiet kind of freedom. Travis lost his badge, and lost his career, and lost the image of success he had carefully built, and lost the trust of his family, and lost his freedom. Those consequences did not come because Darius wanted revenge. They came because Travis made a series of choices, and eventually those choices met evidence. The dash camera mattered, the audio mattered, the military identification mattered, the computer record mattered, Nolan's cooperation mattered, the call to the National Military Command Center mattered. When facts were preserved, the story could no longer be controlled by the person with the loudest voice. That is why truth is powerful. It does not always win immediately. Sometimes truth waits inside a recording. Sometimes it waits inside a computer log. Sometimes it waits in the memory of a frightened witness. Sometimes it waits behind a restricted file notice on a screen. But when enough pieces survive, truth becomes difficult to bury. Darius's story is also a reminder not to confuse appearance with identity. Travis looked at a black man in a vintage Chevelle and decided he understood the entire story. I was wrong about the car, wrong about the money, wrong about the uniform, wrong about the identification, wrong about the military rank, wrong about the crime, wrong about the danger, wrong about the person. Almost every conclusion he made came from assumption rather than fact. That should make all of us uncomfortable because assumption is not limited to police work. People do it in offices, in schools, in stores, in neighborhoods, in families. We look at clothes, accents, cars, jobs, ages, skin color, education, or money, and we build stories before asking questions. Most of those moments will never lead to a federal courtroom, but they still shape how people are treated. They determine who receives patience, who is believed, who is given another chance, who is watched more closely, who is welcomed, who is ignored. Character often appears in those small moments. It is easy to treat a two-star general with respect after the Pentagon calls. The real test was how Darius should have been treated before anyone knew who he was. That is the lesson that reaches beyond this story. Respect that depends on status is not really respect. Kindness that appears only when someone important walks into the room is not really kindness. Fairness that changes according to a person's title is not really fairness. A decent society asks us to treat people with dignity before we know what they can do for us. The quiet stranger, the nervous employee, the teenager, the elderly neighbor, the person wearing work clothes, the person driving an expensive car, the person driving an old car. None of them should have to reveal a hidden title before receiving basic humanity. Darius' 2 stars made the ending dramatic, but the moral would be the same without them. The law is supposed to protect the unknown person too. The person with no connection to the Pentagon. The person who cannot call a 4-star general. The person who does not understand every legal procedure. The person who simply wants to get home safely. That is why good institutions matter. And that is why good people inside institutions matter even more. Policies cannot speak. Badges cannot think. Uniforms cannot choose. People choose. Travis chose to follow prejudice. Nolan first chose silence, then later chose truth. Warren chose to verify. Darius chose restraint. Federal investigators chose to preserve evidence. The court chose accountability. Each decision shaped what happened next. Life often works that way. A single choice may seem small in the moment, but choices accumulate. A careless word becomes an escalation. An unchecked assumption becomes an accusation. An accusation becomes force. Or, in the other direction, a moment of doubt becomes a question. A question becomes verification. Verification becomes truth. Truth prevents harm. We rarely know how far one decision will travel. That is why responsibility matters even when no one is watching, especially then. Travis liked dark roads because he believed darkness gave him freedom. But the real measure of integrity is what a person does when they think nobody powerful will ever know. Darius had spent his life in systems where trust could mean life or death. I understood that authority without discipline is dangerous. She understood that strength is not the ability to make someone afraid. Strength is the ability to control yourself when fear, anger, or pride is trying to control you. That is why his calm felt so powerful. I did not need to shout. He did not need to threaten Travis personally. He did not need to reveal every connection he had. He simply knew who he was, and he knew that facts would eventually matter. For anyone watching this story, there is a lesson in that calm. We cannot always control how someone else sees us. We cannot always stop another person from judging too quickly. We cannot guarantee that every system will work perfectly, but we can control our own choices. We can stay clear enough to remember details. We can speak carefully. We can protect evidence. We can ask for help. We can refuse to let humiliation become our identity. And when we are the person holding power, we can stop and ask whether we are serving truth or serving our ego. That question can change everything. Forgiveness also belongs somewhere in this story, though it does not need to be simple. Forgiveness does not mean removing consequences. Darius did not ask the judge to ignore the crime. He did not say Travis should return to police work. He did not pretend the arrest caused no harm, but he also refused to hate Travis forever. He refused to carry him into every future meeting, every family dinner, every military decision, every quiet moment. That is one form of forgiveness. Not forgetting, not excusing. Simply refusing to let another person's failure occupy permanent space inside your life. Responsibility belongs to the person who caused the harm. Healing belongs to the person who survived it. Those two things can exist together. The ending of Darius Whitaker's story is not really about a bully discovering that his victim outranked him. It is about something more basic. A man was judged before he was known. An officer was given multiple chances to correct himself. A rookie was given a chance to speak. A sergeant was given a chance to verify the truth. A justice system was given evidence. And each person revealed who they were through the choices they made. Darius walked away with his dignity because Travis never had the power to take it from him. He could put handcuffs on Darius's wrists. They could push him into a police car. He could lock him behind bars. He could call him a fraud, but he could not decide what kind of man Darius would become in response. That power remained with Darius. The same is true for all of us. Other people can misunderstand us. They can insult us. They can disappoint us. They can sometimes hurt us. But the final shape of our character still depends on our own decisions. We can choose bitterness or purpose. We can choose ego or humility. We can choose silence or courage. We can choose cruelty or kindness. And if we are fortunate enough to hold authority over other people, we can remember that the greatest proof of strength is not how quickly we can force obedience. It is how carefully we protect the dignity of the people who have less power than we do. That is what public trust means. That is what leadership means. That is what honor looks like when nobody is applauding. Darius returned to the Pentagon because the world was bigger than the officer who had arrested him. There were troops to support, allies to coordinate with, responsibilities waiting. His life continued. Travis entered federal custody because the world was also bigger than the badge he once wore. The law he had ignored finally applied to him. There is a symmetry in that ending, but the deepest lesson is not about karma. It is about consequence. Karma makes for a dramatic word. Consequence is more useful. Consequences grow from choices. Travis chose assumption over evidence. He chose pride over verification. He chose force over patience. He chose humiliation over professionalism. Those choices built the road that eventually led him into a federal courtroom. Darius chose composure. He chose clarity. He chose duty. Chose to protect the rookie from following the same path. He chose to let the law work instead of becoming consumed by revenge. Those choices built a different road. And that is worth remembering. The roads we travel in life are often shaped long before we see the destination. They are shaped by the small decisions we repeat, how we speak to people, how we use authority, whether we listen, whether we admit when we might be wrong, whether we protect someone who cannot reward us, whether we tell the truth when silence would be easier, whether we remain kind when another person gives us an excuse not to be. No one makes those choices perfectly. People fail. People hesitate. People sometimes need a second chance. Nolan Briggs did. His fear prevented him from stopping the arrest, but later he chose to preserve the evidence and tell the truth. His second choice mattered. It did not erase the first, but it prevented the silence from becoming permanent. That is another form of hope. A bad moment does not have to become a permanent identity if a person is willing to take responsibility and change direction. Institutions can change direction too. A police department damaged by misconduct can rebuild trust if it chooses transparency. A supervisor can change culture by refusing to tolerate bullying. A rookie can become a better officer by learning that obedience to a partner is never more important than obedience to the law. A community can begin healing when complaints are heard instead of dismissed. A person who has been wronged can move forward without pretending the wrong never happened. Second chances are meaningful when they come with responsibility. Without responsibility, a second chance is only permission to repeat the same harm. With responsibility, it can become growth. Darius's calm response was not a trap designed to destroy Travis. It was simply what happened when one man's discipline met another man's arrogance. Travis created his own evidence. He created his own escalation. He created his own consequences. Darius did not have to manufacture anything. He only had to remain himself long enough for the truth to become visible. That may be the most powerful image in the entire story. A decorated general standing quietly behind the bars of a small holding cell, not because he was powerless, but because everyone around him had misunderstood where the real power was. The officer had the keys. The sergeant had the computer. The department had the building. But Darius had truth, and once truth reached the right ears, the keys, the computer, and the building no longer mattered. If this story stayed with you, remember the simplest part. Never let another person's appearance become your evidence. Never let authority become an excuse to stop listening. Never let fear of a bully silence your conscience. And never assume that calm means weakness. Sometimes, the quietest person in the room is the one who understands the situation best. If you value stories about courage, honor, justice, responsibility, and the strength to remain decent under pressure, share this story with someone who might appreciate it. Like the video if you want more stories about ordinary moments that reveal extraordinary character, and subscribe to the channel for more narratives about dignity, accountability, and second chances. And think about the choice that mattered most to you. Was it Darius staying calm beside his Chevelle? Was it Nolan realizing that loyalty to a partner could never be more important than loyalty to what was right? Was it Sergeant Warren Pike choosing to verify the military identification instead of following the loudest voice in the room? Or was it Darius returning to his work after the courtroom, refusing to let one officer's prejudice become the center of his life? Maybe the strongest lesson is simple. We cannot control every assumption another person makes about us, but we can control the kind of person we become when that assumption turns unfair. We can choose discipline over chaos, truth over ego, courage over silence, responsibility over excuses, and kindness over contempt. That is how dignity survives. That is how trust is rebuilt. And that is how real strength proves itself, not by making someone else smaller, but by refusing to become small inside ourselves.